This ended up being the worst ever natural disaster Australia had experienced. Yeah, it was. And I could literally see it. So ahead of the fire was this gigantic column of smoke that it looked a lot more like clouds than smoke, because I couldn't possibly believe that anything this big was smoke from a fire. And yet it was.
In this episode, we're going to talk about what it feels like to be in a 350-degree convection oven, the beauty of community and what happens when people band together, and what is a Rotary Club and what it's like to be part of one. Now, my friends, would be a good time to grab an ice-cold beer because it's about to get hot up in here.
You're listening to the Travel Horror Stories podcast, a show that listens to real stories from travel bloggers and travelers just like you. Then we unpack those stories to discuss safety tricks, prevention treats, horror hacks, and follow-up tactics. The goal is to turn travel nightmares into dreams of beaches, sunshine, and margaritas.
And now, live from the Rudderless Travel Studio in downtown Toronto, Canada, here's your host, Christopher Rudder! Hi, Chris.
Oh my gosh. You know what? It's funny. Okay. It's funny because the only other person who did that is Kevin Wager. So it's funny how you guys are similar in that way, because he did the exact same thing.
No, but he learned it from me. That was all me.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I'm just saying. I am the OG. Let's not forget that.
You are the original gangster.
I'm so gangster. Okay. You have no idea.
Oh my gosh. This was a bad idea. It's going to take me forever to get through this episode. Okay.
Part of my mission.
Oh boy, here we go. The weather outside. Wait, I should probably mention that Kevin's episode comes later in case you've been listening religiously to every single episode back to back, like binge watching Netflix and thinking, I don't remember listening to an episode with some dude named Kevin. So I just thought I'd put that there. All right. So the weather outside, it isn't too bad. I mean, it's seasonal. It definitely feels like #winter is coming, which I personally hate. But for the added fun, we are in the middle of the second wave of COVID-19, which I hate even more. It would appear that shit don't want to go away. That said, what I do love is that you guys are here with me. Don't forget to head over to travelhorrorstoriespodcast.com and subscribe to the newsletter so you can get notified of new episodes via email the minute that I hit publish. So my guest for this rudderless ship is the one and the only Nora Dunn. She is like the best thing ever. She's one of those kind of people that if you ever run into her at an event, just plant yourself and just listen to all her stories. She is hilarious. Her writing is exactly like her personality. It's just raw. It's just real. It's just no sugarcoating. And this episode is actually a special episode. It's episode 15, and it's the first of a series of 5 episodes that will be released every 5th episode, that all involve Nora Dunn, because she is such an incredible, funny person with 12 years of travel experience living on the road. So with one person alone, I mean, she has enough travel horror stories for me to do an entire season on. So, I mean, it was very easy for me to just have her come on and tell one story every 5 episodes because she has so many of them. It's crazy. Trust me, it's crazy. We'll get into a lot of them over the next couple of episodes, but I'm telling you, it's nuts. And I think I'm going to call this little series Travel Isn't All Roses and Lollipops because it was inspired by her blog post of the same name, which I'll definitely link in the show notes. So Nora, how are you doing?
Apparently, I'm a sucker for punishment. I think this is what we can devise from all of my disasters on the road. But yeah, I'm doing good, because we're not in the middle of a worldwide emergency or anything else I could write about that's weird and wonderful, are we?
It was kind of like, I have a podcast on travel horror stories, and what's happening right now is completely
the
taking
ultimate
the
travel
cake.
horror story.
I know, it's like, what do I do with that? All right, well, I'll just record more episodes. So, tell us about yourself and tell us about your blog, the Pro Hobo.
Hey now. Okay, so I have a quick story about that because you've just opened the door wide open for this story. So my blog, just in case anyone needs to know, is The Professional Hobo. The Professional Hobo. But people really like to shorten these things, let's call her Probo or,
Oh, no.
And I was doing this volunteer program in Spain where I was helping Spaniards practice their conversational English. And a few Spaniards thought it would be a really good idea, completely innocently, to call me the Pro Ho.
Oh, no.
At which point I had to describe to them the finer intricacies of what hoe means in English and why being a pro hoe would probably not be a good idea. Perhaps they could find a different nickname for me.
She's not just your average hoe. She's a pro hoe.
I'm a pro hoe, yeah.
Okay, my bad. All right. So tell us about your blog, The Professional Hobo.
There we go. So back in 2006, I was in Toronto running a very busy financial planning practice when, I'll make a very long story short by saying I decided to sell everything I owned. No crisis happened there. I decided to sell everything I owned to pursue a lifelong dream of traveling the world full time. I didn't know where I would go, what I would do, how I would earn money along the way, or if I would even last more than a few months. So I'm as surprised as anyone else is to discover that I actually traveled full time for 12 years before returning to my hometown, which also surprised me as much as anyone else did, to create a home base in this place where I never thought I would live again. And it was the greatest thing I actually could have done. And so now I have a home base, and for the last couple of years, I've been traveling for about half of every year.
Wow. That's incredible. And what kind of things do you talk about on your blog specifically?
So there's a few different elements of my website. I mean, when I started travel blogging wasn't a thing. Travel blogs were just online journals. So that's exactly what mine was. The tagline was basically The Adventures of a Girl with No Fixed Address. And I just wrote really bad stuff. Like I wrote badly and I wrote frequently. And that was where I cut my teeth and really learned the art of writing something that someone might actually want to read. And then as the years went by and the travel blogging industry kind of became a thing, I, as one of the first travel bloggers, gained a certain amount of notoriety. So somewhere in there, I did decide to rebrand, and one of my rebranding basically parlayed my former expertise as a certified financial planner with my lifestyle of travel, because I realized there were a lot of people out there who wanted to travel full time, but they couldn't wrap their heads around the logistics, like how to arrange their finances, what to do with their affairs, how to sell their stuff. So basically, my blog rebranded into How to Travel Full-Time in a Financially Sustainable Way, which has three distinct pillars. One is earning money remotely. The second is spending your money wisely. And then the third is balancing what you're earning and what you're spending so you can travel for as long as you want. So that's the meat and bones of my website. But there's another element of my website. If you dig deep enough behind all my travel lifestyle guides, you will find what you, my dear friend Chris, has already found, which is my personal editorials.
Yes.
I love writing about my experiences of living and traveling around the world, and I've become a little bit known for writing about these experiences, good, bad, and otherwise. And for me, I write about the bad stuff, not to be sensationalistic, but in many cases because I believe that misadventures make for the best travel stories. And I do love to tell a good story.
Absolutely, I agree. And that's part of the reason why I started this podcast, because I sort of got tired of, I think it was more Instagram. I started to get tired of all these pretty little pictures with pretty little destinations, with everything's perfect. The food is perfect. The sunset is perfect. The weather is perfect. And I just know, as a person who travels a lot, that that's just not the truth.
And you know what? Everything that you said there, that's exactly why I don't do Instagram. Just saying. Mic drop.
Peace out. Fair enough. I know, because it can be very, very discouraging. But I won't delve into that because I mean, Instagram is. So, anyways, do you want to play a game?
Sure. I always want to play a game.
I know you do. Okay, so we're going to play 3 stories, 2 truths, 1 lie. You're going to give me 3 stories. 2 of them are going to be true, and 1 of them is going to be a lie. And I'm going to try to guess which one is a lie. Nora is a very close and dear friend of mine, so we're going to try to see if she could stop me.
Booyah. All right. Excellent. Challenge accepted. All right. My first truth is I filmed a television show in New Zealand where the premise of the show involved basically me doing every adventure, high adrenaline activity you can imagine, from the world's highest to the deepest to the fastest to the slowest to the stupidest things, including the world's highest bungee jump.
Okay.
Truth number 2. I spent 2 years in Peru apprenticing with a shaman, working with the plant medicines ayahuasca and San Pedro, before moving on to Ecuador, where I worked as a shaman's assistant for another year.
Wow.
Truth number 3. When I was in Australia, I decided that I would ride 11,000 kilometers of trains in 11 days straight, all with the sole purpose to see if it's possible to get bored on a train. Boom.
Damn you. Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna try to break this down logically. Okay. It's very you brought it. You brought good game. I have to admit, you did not make it easy.
I know.
Okay. So
I'm gonna.
You are that good. Okay. So I'm just gonna go ahead and say that the Australian story. Okay. I know how you are when it comes to trains. I know you love trains. I know the whole hobo thing is based by a train. Damn it, you even have an ebook about trains. So I'm gonna go ahead and say that is probably true. The second story, I'm gonna go ahead and say that is true. So I'm gonna say that the first story is a lie. Now I know that you did do performance stuff. I know that. I just don't think that it's what you were saying I don't think it's the same kind of performance that you were talking about in the first story.
You would be correct. Although
yes,
I really did my best to trick you, because I did film a television show in New Zealand where I did do every high adventure activity known to man.
Are you serious?
Including the world's, except it wasn't the world's highest bungee jump, because the world's highest bungee jump is in South Africa, which of course I've done that as well, twice. So it was a slight mistruth, but you still pinned me anyway. Damn, you're good.
Yes, that's right. I come correct.
I don't want to play anymore.
This interview is done.
That's it. I'm out. You're supposed to make your guests feel good.
Just for the record, we're doing the natural disasters one, right? Because I don't know. There's so much of them.
Which of my many disasters are we going to talk about today?
Yes. What would you do if, while working in exchange for free accommodation in Australia, and just when you're about to settle down, you find yourself in the middle of Australia's Victorian bushfires? So tell us what brought you to Australia and the whole, how did that whole thing start?
So what brought me to Australia was actually a work exchange job. I was exploring, I was fairly new, it was a couple of years into my full-time travel career, and one of the things that I had discovered and really enjoyed doing was working in exchange for free accommodation, or volunteering in exchange for free accommodation. In all of my travels, I saved over $100,000 with various ways of getting free accommodation. Quick plug, if you visit my website, I wrote a book on how to get free accommodation around the world. Happens to be really good. Just released the 3rd edition. Just saying.
I just noticed that on your blog. Yeah. And this 3rd edition was really you revamped the whole thing.
I brought it. Yeah. I basically expanded the content by another 50%.
Wow.
And I went deep, and I'm taking people home with how to get free accommodation around the world.
Wicked. I'll definitely include that in the show notes for sure.
Woo! Thank you. So it was actually a work exchange job that brought me to Australia, and I was volunteering on a property. It was a 300-hectare property that had horses and goats and llamas, and it was a wildlife sanctuary. And basically, I was there with my partner at the time to help take care of the property. So anything from landscaping to cleaning to leading eco treks on llamas. I actually led eco treks on llamas in Australia.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I kid not.
Oh my gosh, you never cease to amaze me this way.
I know. So it was great. And shortly after, probably about 6 months into this volunteer gig, my partner at the time and I realized that we really liked it in Australia. By that point, we'd kind of dug in. We were in the countryside, about an hour and a half northeast of Melbourne, and we were really liking it. So through some connections, we had, in a former life, I used to be a Rotarian. Actually, I've always been a Rotarian. When I was traveling the world, I would often attend Rotary meetings around the world. And so we had some inroads to the local Rotary Club in Australia that had just opened their arms and hearts to us. So we found a place to rent really inexpensively. It was a full house in this kind of abandoned community that was originally built to build a power station that wasn't working anymore. So it was like this weird ghost town, and we were like the only house there that was occupied.
Wow.
It was weird and delightful. So and that ended basically, it was a 3-bedroom house that we rented for the equivalent of about 250 Canadian dollars a month.
What?
So we were like, damn, we could stay here a while. Woo!
Wow.
And a few days after moving into our house, the Victorian bushfires swept through.
Oh, stop.
Dun, dun, dun.
Too good to be true. Oh, man.
So the Victorian bushfires, this was in 2009, February of 2009, which is the height of Australian summer. And Australia, or at least this part of Australia, had to date been suffering a really epic drought. It had been about 10 years of drought. Living in the countryside, I was very aware of how little water there was. You know, I looked at my house backed onto a river, or what was supposed to be a river that had evaporated into a creek. And this water source was feeding not only all the agricultural fields that were in the area, but then also this was the water source for Melbourne, 2 hours away.
No.
So it was like, woo. It was definitely, there were a lot of fires happening, but they were little fires. On the day of the Victorian bushfires, it was 50 degrees Celsius, and the winds were 110 kilometers an hour.
Whoa.
Now, that's kind of like being in a convection oven. Like I initially, you know how like when you're driving along in a car and it's hot and you stick your hand out the window and it's refreshing?
Right.
Yeah. On this day, I tried that and I burnt my hand.
Oh my gosh.
It was so hot. So
Wow.
it was really, everyone knew it was not a matter of if there would be fires. It was simply a matter of where and how bad they would be.
Wow.
What nobody had anticipated was quite how bad they would be. And this ended up being the worst ever natural disaster Australia had experienced. That is until this year, when they've just been ravaged by fires. But at the time, what made this really a dramatic event was that there were a whole bunch of little fires that had been started. Sometimes it was just like spontaneous combustion, or sometimes it was, believe it or not, arson, or what have you. The place was a tinderbox. It didn't take a lot to set off a fire.
My gosh.
And because of the winds, every fire became a lot bigger, a lot faster.
The wind spreads the fire around easily. And if everything's already dry, it's easy to catch fire. And
it was like a tinderbox.
My gosh.
So a friend of ours worked for the CFA, or volunteered for the CFA, and that's the Country Fire Authority. Believe it or not, fires in the countryside of Australia are fought by volunteer firefighters. There is
as in they're not getting paid, and
no, they're not getting paid, and many of them don't really know what they're doing, to be perfectly honest. Because in an instant like this, like it's not that they're untrained, it's just that in an instance like this, they were all thrown into this horrific natural disaster, and not everybody had the right amount of training to deal with it, but it was all hands on deck.
Right, for sure.
Now, I will note that there is another department that comes in when things get really bad, as things did, and they are a paid, very well-trained department to deal with things like this. But the front line for fires in the countryside are the CFA. So these guys are heroes, and they're normal Joes like you and me.
Wow.
So one of my friends was a CFA firefighter, and he gets the call. They're like, "Oh man, you got to come into the station, bring your equipment, and get ready." So, myself and a couple of other friends were like, "Well, we don't really have anything to do, so we're going to go in the station and sit with you." And then they were sitting in the station waiting for the calls to come, and we were listening to the radio, and we were hearing call after call. Like the Narberthong lumber mill, huge fire, 9 people surrounded by fire, can't get out. This fire, that fire, there's a house fire, there's a rec center fire, and in many cases, people needed help. So this was a statewide radio. So we were hearing reports of fires that weren't necessarily this crew weren't necessarily being called out on. But as I'm sitting there listening to this, I'm like, I gotta do something. This is epic. And so I just whip out my notebook and I start taking notes of every call that comes in. And what it is, and what the mood is, and what's happening, and I noticed some of the other firefighters start getting into it. They're like, "Hey Nora, did you get this call? Yeah, write this down. This one's a weird one." And "Hey Nora, write this down. This is happening. Oh my gosh, Nora, this happened. Write that down." So I'm being fed all this information about what's happening. So what ultimately ended up happening is all these little fires, were being blown south, or southeast or west or whatever it was, by these great winds. And it all went horribly wrong when the winds changed.
Oh no.
And basically blew all these fires back on themselves. So instead of being a whole bunch of little fires, they became one gigantic fire.
Oh no.
This fire was a 3,000-foot wall of death.
Oh my gosh.
Blew through a good chunk of the state, including one of the ground zero for where things went really badly. It was a town called Marysville, which is a beautiful little town that Melbourneites would go to for, there's retreat centers, and there were lovely little places to shop. You can, buy antiques, and it was one of those lovely little towns you drive to on the weekend, and you get your ice cream, and you sit there and enjoy nature. So Marysville, boom, obliterated. And we very soon realized that it was coming for us and that we had to run as well.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was. And I could literally see it. So ahead of the fire was this gigantic column of smoke that it looked a lot more like clouds than smoke, because I couldn't possibly believe that anything this big was smoke from a fire. And yet it was.
Wow.
So the thing with fires, especially on windy days like this, is if you can see flames, it's already too late. You should have left before, because the fire can jump ahead of itself. And before you know it, like if you're trying to outrun the actual flames themselves, and then the fire jumps ahead of itself, suddenly you're surrounded by fire. So I didn't actually, it's a lie. On this day, I didn't actually see fire. But I did. What happened was almost immediately, like once we saw this column of smoke coming for us, we were like, "Oh my God, we got to go." So we hopped in the car. I mean, by this point, we didn't have stuff. So we raced back to the house and we got just a few things, which of course for me included my laptop and my passport. Those are really the only two things that I could think of that I needed, my laptop and my passport. Like, screw everything else.
Like, I'm glad you got your priorities sorted. But okay,
maybe a fresh change of underwear. I don't know.
No water, no canned goods, but I need my laptop.
No, exactly. Exactly. I was so prepared. I can't even begin to tell you. So,
honestly, I would have done the same thing. So carry on.
Well, by the time we left our house, it had gone from being a clear day with a column of smoke coming over to a day where we could barely see 10 meters in front of us.
Oh my gosh, stop.
And we're driving. Wow. And so it's there. So now all the air is like orange, gray, like it's this weird apocalyptic color.
Oh my gosh.
And we're just driving. We're driving as fast as we can to get to the main town, which was Alexandra, to see what was happening there. And so we got to the town of Alexandra, and it was like, it was apocalyptic there as well. I mean, there were people wandering around. It was tragic because there were people who had escaped from Marysville, which was in the process of being obliterated by fire. And in that very moment, and there were people who had escaped, but they'd not escaped with maybe, they'd left, they don't know where their family members are, or they don't know where, or they had to leave. There was one woman who had to leave, something or someone behind, and she's crying. And I mean, it was unbelievable. Nobody knows where anybody else is. And it was just this like refugee scenario from hell.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And the day is getting darker and darker and darker. We're like, well, geez, I don't even know if Alexandra is safe enough. I mean, there were definitely by this stage of the game, the DSC, which is the Department of Sustainable something or other, who are the big time firefighters. By this point, they'd shown up because Alexandra was a kind of a stronghold in the area, and it was like it needed to be protected.
Wow.
But we didn't feel confident that it was going to be. So we kept going, and we went on to the next town where we got a hotel and spent the night. And so began 3 weeks of fire. So the first day was the worst. It was the day that just obliterated a big chunk of Victoria, but they didn't go out. They continued to burn for 3 weeks. I was evacuated from the place that I was living in as fires burnt across the entire mountain range that my house backed on for 3 weeks. So I was staying on the floors of pubs. I was staying on, floors and couches of people who had just a little bit of extra room. There was a huge camp set up for the DSC firefighters, as well as people who were, for all intents and purposes, refugees.
My gosh.
Of which I was basically one of them.
Holy smokes. Wow.
So a couple of days into this, I was like, whoa, man, this is heavy, but I'm okay. And I got to do something. And I was all, by this point, I'd returned to Alexandra where I knew people and where I was hooked into the Rotary Club there. Now, Rotary, quick side note, I was saying the other day, I was telling somebody that I was a Rotarian. And he's like, oh, you mean like the Freemasons? And I was like,
not quite.
No.
Perhaps you should probably explain what a Rotarian is. I mean, I've heard of Rotary Clubs. I know what they are. There's a few of them in Toronto. They do amazing work. They deal with the veterans, right?
No.
Oh, damn.
I mean, yes and no. Yes
How
and
about
no.
let's just have Nora just explain what that is, because that's what she does. Okay, you stop now, Chris.
Rotary is a worldwide service club, and it's been around for over 100 years now. And the mantra, the motto, the overlying principle of Rotary is service above self, to be of service to others above taking care of ourselves. And so Rotary has spearheaded various projects both on local and international levels. For example, Rotary is almost single-handedly responsible for eradicating polio from the world.
Wow.
And to this day, the fight continues, but it's been limited now. It's been brought down to just just a couple of outbreaks in a couple of countries. And the work that the Rotary is continuing to do is to just immunize people and children to make sure that polio is well and truly a thing of the past.
That's amazing. Can I just say real quickly that
No.
you are no longer the host of your own show. I'm taking over. No, I'm just actually completely not surprised that you're part of that. That's like so you. Like I need to make a difference. I need to make a change. That's totally 100% Nora.
Aww.
This is totally you. It's totally you. So I could totally see how you'd be part of an organization like that. 100% makes sense.
And honestly, that was one of my MOs when I decided to travel full time. I knew that I wanted to volunteer and I wanted to not only, satisfy my own lifelong dream and crack the code of countries and cultures around the world, but also really to make a difference wherever I could. And Australia in that moment was one of those times when I could make a difference.
Fantastic.
So it was basically, this was just a year after another huge Rotary project where I accidentally started an international NGO in Asia. That's a different story, but that was also Rotary related. So here we are 1 year later, and unfortunately, because of the previous year project, I really solidly burnt out. So I didn't really have it in me to spearhead anything, but that was okay because the Rotary Club of Alexandra had already spearheaded opening up a warehouse to receive the donations that were coming in en masse for the fire survivors, because people were donating all kinds of things, and then in turn to organize and then redistribute all of these donations to the fire survivors.
Wow.
So it ended up being a huge operation and one that I could step into and be a part of on a variety of different levels.
Wow.
And it gave me a sense of purpose and certainly something to do with the days, and was it was very rewarding. So here's a quick story to illustrate how this place run and how rewarding it was for me as an outsider to see how Australians dealt with adversity. Mm-hmm. So we're in the province, the state of Victoria in southern Australia, or the southeast part of Australia. And we get a call at 8 o'clock at night, and they said, be at the warehouse in an hour to open it up because there's two trucks that have come in full of donations from Darwin. Now, Darwin is thousands of kilometers to the north, in the northeast part of Australia. So we were not too happy about having to open up the warehouse at 9 o'clock at night, but it was all hands on deck, so we did. And I mean, these were brand new mattresses and furniture. This wasn't just someone who went through their closet and was giving away their old T-shirts. People had bought brand new things so people could set up their homes again.
Or these are companies that are like actually donating, or not donating, but giving away stuff that they probably sell.
In some cases, companies. In many more cases, just people who bought
Just
stuff.
people. Wow, incredible. Okay.
And part of that was through the Rotary connection as well, because Rotary, being a worldwide organization, it's really an amazing network for getting stuff done. And this was one of those examples. So we're just unloading these huge tractor trailers. We're unloading all this amazing new stuff. And we're kind of overwhelmed by it all. And we say to the drivers, we say, can we put you up for the night now and give you a meal? You've just been driving for the last 18 hours.
Wow.
And they said, no, can't do, got to turn around because there's more waiting for us to bring down.
Wow, incredible.
Now, the real irony here is Darwin at that time was actually underwater with floods.
Stop.
And yet they were helping the fire survivors because they recognized that their compatriots to the south were suffering more than they were.
Oh my gosh. What the hell?
So it was like that, wow, man, these guys are really banding together. And I think in part that's part of the Australian disposition, due in part to, I think, their geography, because Australia is so isolated as a country. I mean, New Zealand's even more isolated, but let's talk about Australia for the moment. It's incredibly isolated. If you want to go anywhere, you've got to get on a plane for, 10 hours
Yeah, no kidding.
to leave your country and go anywhere else.
Wow.
Perth in Western Australia is considered the world's most isolated capital city, or one of them, and for good reason. If you look at it on a map, it's like, damn, yeah, there's nothing near there.
Wow.
So
That's crazy.
that breeds a culture where they help one another, and it was heartwarming to see that.
Yeah, beautiful thing, beautiful thing. Oh my gosh, wow.
So then one day, I'm doing my work at the I'm doing my work at the distribution center, and my phone rings, and it's the Canadian Embassy. They're like, "Wow, we're so glad we found you." I'm like, "Uh, I didn't know you were looking for me, but here I am. Yay!" They're like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm okay. You know, I'm being taken care of. I'm having money. What do you need? Do you need anything? Would you?" Now, it's also worth noting that for at least for the first week, even if we had wanted to leave Australia, we couldn't. Because
Ah,
although we were okay in Alexandra, we were literally surrounded by fires.
wow.
So all the roads were closed. There was no getting out. You know, there was no helicopter that could lift us in. And, you know, like we had to take care of ourselves for the first week or so.
So what stopped the fire from enclosing Alexandria then? Was it because you had a better, like more people that were fighting against it or more, like, do you know what I mean? Like, because if you were surrounded by it, what stopped it from kind of enclosing in on you there?
Well, two things. One, after that first day, the winds went down, so we weren't dealing with as precarious a situation with regards to how fast the fires were moving.
Okay,
And
gotcha.
two, sheer manpower. Sheer
Wow.
manpower. I mean, it was all hands on deck, and they were doing all the things that, truth be told, should have been done prior to the fires with regards to making sure that the hazards thereof and a lot of the debris that could catch was taken care of. And they were just on the front lines. They were just fighting it and fighting it and fighting every single day, fighting the fire and preventing it from spreading.
Wow. That's incredible. Oh my gosh.
So here's the Canadian Embassy going, "My God, I'm glad I found you." I'm like, "Wow, I am too." And they're like, "What do you need? What do you need? Do you need money?" And I'm like, "No." And I'm immediately like, "Shit. I should have said I need money. They were going to give me money. I
I
could have said
know.
yes."
I need thousands of dollars.
I know. But the reality was the community was taking care of us. And we didn't need anything in that moment. And so did you need a place to stay? Well, no, I pretty much got that sorted anyway. And so and they said, "Well, is there anything we can do for you?" And by this point in time, my partner at the time and I had really fallen in love with Australia pretty hardcore. And but my partner had run out of money. That's another disaster that we'll talk about in another podcast.
So I'm sure you're not short of those.
And so he needed to find a way to make money really quickly because unlike me, he didn't have the makings of an online business. So I said, yeah, you know what? There is something you can do for us. Extend our visas and give us working rights.
Wow.
Great, no problem. We'll do that for you right away. And they
Brilliant.
did. So
Brilliant.
they gave us a 1-year extension on the visas that we had, and they arranged for working rights, which I only very casually took advantage of, but my partner was able to take advantage of in a more wholehearted way when the fires had been dealt with. And the fires, all in all, it was 3 weeks of being evacuated. The diary that I referred to earlier that I kept,
Yeah.
I published all of that on my website. And a few years later, I was contacted by the National Library of Australia that wanted to archive my diary
Oh my
as
gosh.
a piece of history.
Oh my gosh. Stop. Oh my gosh.
So
You're
that was
incredible.
a little feather in my cap for just really writing about what I was experiencing at that time.
Oh my gosh. That's I don't even know what to say. I'm actually speechless. That's incredible.
And mic drop. Boom.
Yeah, no kidding. There's nothing else to discuss here. All right, show's over. No. This segment is brought to you by the book How to Get Free Accommodation Around the World by none other than Nora Dunn.
In all of my 12 years of traveling the world full time, I saved over $100,000 on accommodation. And I had incredible, culturally immersive and rewarding experiences in so doing. I also stayed in beautiful spots around the world. So getting free accommodation does not mean sacrificing on style. And there's lots of different ways to do it, from volunteering to house sitting to hospitality exchanges, living on boats, and home exchanges. In my book, I talk about all 5 different forms of free accommodation. I show you how to get gigs. I show you how to stand out and create profiles that will put you in demand. And if you happen to be running an online business, I talk about doing that concurrently to getting various forms of free accommodation, because some are definitely better than others in terms of getting free accommodation. It's in its 3rd edition now, and all for the cost of a cheeseburger. You can learn all these different ways to get free accommodation, and it will pay for itself in less than 1 night on your next trip.
You know what? Usually at this point of the show, we would talk about what you did right, what you did wrong, and what you think you should have done. And I think when you're dealing with Mother Nature, there's not really much that you could do. But is there anything that you could think of that maybe you might have done differently or handled differently or anything like that?
Certainly what I did right was to not get overly involved. I didn't try to I didn't try to be a hero. I just tried to do what I could, and I kept myself safe. So, and being tied in with the Rotary Club and immediately jumping on that and working side by side, shoulder to shoulder with locals who were trying to help those who were affected by the fires, as well as those who had been directly affected by the fires, was a really amazing cultural experience for me. And it was something that I wouldn't trade in for anything. And it helped me to contribute back to what had become a community that I'd fallen in love with. So I feel really good about that. Not really sure I did anything wrong, although kind of existentially, getting the working visas in Australia ended up spelling in a very long and convoluted way the end of my relationship with with my boyfriend at the time, who basically about 1.5 years later, I left in Australia with his Australian girlfriend. So I could pursue other adventures. But even that, I have to say, I mean, it was kind of a blessing in disguise, because by that stage of the game, we had been, the writing was on the wall as far as I was concerned. It just had to play out in painful ways, as many relationships need to do. Again,
which we'll talk about on episode 10. No,
exactly. The topic of our next chat, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay. So can anybody really, like, with regards to the Rotary Club, is that something that anybody can be a part of? Or like, how do you go about supporting something like that? I mean, I was going to say, not really to be funny, but I can't help but be funny. Pretty much.
You're modest too, apparently.
I know. You in Australia have nothing against COVID-19, that's for sure. But that said, is there like, what do you need to become part of a Rotary Club, and how do people answer the call if when the Rotary Club is asking for help? Like, do you know what I mean?
So Rotary, in its very beginnings, was not only a service club, but also a kind of a networking experience for professionals. Also known for many, many years, decades really, as an old boys club.
Right.
And this is a stigma that they've fought really hard to shake off in the last few decades, since, accepting women as members and stuff like that.
Exactly, yeah.
But also in realizing that, if they are to uphold the motto of service above self, then it doesn't need to be about what you do necessarily. That said, every Rotary Club around the world, or even around the city for that matter, has a different flavor and a different membership. So if you have the call to do something bigger than yourself and to be hooked in with an influential organization that has the power to create amazing change around the world, I would suggest that you visit a couple of Rotary Clubs in your area and find one that feels good for you. The club that I ended up joining was amazing for me because we liked to break all the rules. Like at the time there was this rule where it's like only one person from any given kind of like professional category is allowed in the club, and that way the networking opportunities are maximized. And my club was like, nah, screw that. You know what? Because I was in the financial industry, and there were like 5 other people who were in the financial industry, which technically was against the rules. But my club was like, no, you know what? We care about the people. We care about who our members are, and we want to have a good time together, and we want to do good work together. And just because you happen to be in an industry that's already represented by our club shouldn't mean that you can't belong.
Right. I like
there
that.
are other clubs. There's a club in Toronto that's in downtown Toronto that prides itself on having a very young membership. They are like the millennial club.
Wow.
There's another club that's an all digital club. They are 100% digital. They don't even have physical meetings anywhere. Wow. So there's a lot of different clubs with a lot of different flavors. So find one that speaks to you and hook in. And once you're hooked into that club, you will be connected to the greater network of what's possible in your local community and area and country, but then also around the world. And like I said, Rotary has actually been a really kind of unconventionally amazing way for me to travel the world. Because when I show up at a Rotary meeting, we share the bond of being Rotarians. So even if language is an issue, I'm welcomed with open arms. And I meet a bunch of people who I would never otherwise have met if I were just staying in hotels and hostels or Airbnbs, these are locals. These are locals who are living and working in their community, and I'm getting to meet them. And not only that, but we share the bond of friendship. So I've made a lot of friends through Rotary. And, I would attend a meeting and they'd be like, oh, what have you seen in the area? Oh, here, let me take you to see this. Let's go here. Hey, come over for dinner. And then, right there, I was able to achieve one of my primary motives for traveling the world, which was to break bread around dinner tables around the world, to see what people talk about. How did the children play? What's important? What are going issues around the world? So Rotary has really been very instrumental for me as a way of traveling the world in a much more immersive way than I could have otherwise.
That's incredible. And I'm keeping an eye on the time here, but I just really wanted to kind of go quickly and talk about your other natural disaster story. Because, I know that you were telling me that you weren't directly in the center of that, but what you ended up doing with regards to that was a big deal. So I just wanted to bring some quick attention to that. So if you don't mind just quickly talking about that story real quickly.
So exactly 1 year prior to the bushfires in Australia, I was in Thailand and I was doing a retreat in northern Thailand, and I saw this gigantic storm blow through, like really like huge dark clouds. And my boyfriend said, man, someone over there is having a really bad day. And it wasn't until we got back into Chiang Mai that we actually saw that what that storm was Cyclone Nargis, which basically obliterated the neighboring country of Burma or Myanmar, depending on what you want to call it, and left 2 million people without food, shelter, or drinkable water.
2 million people?
2 million people. And we were like 150 kilometers away. So we were safe, but I'd never been so close to something so dramatic. And I felt really affected by it. So, very long story short, what hatched as a simple little plan to rent a truck, fill it with water, and drive it to the border, and have an aid worker on the inside pick it up. Within 24 hours, and the help of Rotary, that plan morphed into having the Royal Thai Air Force and a C-130 Hercules CASA airplane waiting for us to fill it and deliver goods into Burma.
Oh my gosh.
This inspired a gigantic fundraising effort that was dramatic, doesn't even begin to explain how things worked. We spent the days networking with Rotary Clubs and getting donations and arranging logistics. We spent the nights networking online and raising money with the platform that we were getting money directly into a country that had closed borders. A Red Cross ship sank off the coast of Burma because they weren't letting it in. They were only accepting aid from their allies, being Thailand and China. So we had the in, and we had the direct way to funnel people's donations into the the situation.
Wow.
Things went completely pear-shaped when the Canadian embassy called and said, "We highly advise you cease and desist right away. You're very close to breaking economic sanctions against Burma." It all kind of went pear-shaped from there. But in the end, we were able to funnel $15,000 into the cause within 2 weeks. And we were able to, we actually saw the money go to the right place and the right people. And it was through an organization called Shelter Box, which basically were these giant boxes that provided unto themselves, provided shelter, food, drinkable water, and other necessities for families of up to 10 people to live for 6 months. And there were a variety of those boxes. So that was that in a nutshell. And then we got to Australia, and this happened 1 year later. And then I went to New Zealand, and by this point, people were like, "Yeah, Nora, I don't know that we really want you here." And I'm like,
I was just thinking, Nora, I don't know if I really want to travel with you anywhere.
They're like, "Natural disasters, hello." I'm like, no, you don't get it. I'm here to help. It's good. So New Zealand didn't heed the call of not letting me in, so they let me in, and I was pummeled by 2 cyclones, one on top of the other.
Oh my gosh.
And I was volunteering at a retreat center, and basically it washed out the entire road, allowing people to come in and out of the retreat center. And we had like a more than full house at the time of like literally like dozens and dozens of guests, plus all the staff and volunteers. And once again, we were all just, that wasn't as dramatic in terms of the fallout. We just had to learn to survive with one another, which of course we did, because I'm here to tell the story. There's a few other people that might not be here to tell the story, but we won't talk about that.
Oh no.
I'm kidding. No one died.
I was about to, wow. I don't know which way the story's gonna go with you. Because I guess anything's possible at this point.
Nobody was hurt in the making of this podcast. It's okay.
Oh my gosh, what the hell? Okay, so yeah, so how long did you need to stay kind of like in that situation for?
That was only a few weeks, and that wasn't really a big problem. And what it was I was very thankful for the experience, because as you know, bad things tend to come in threes, and I was like, boom, we're done.
Yeah, no kidding.
This is the third one. The third one in 3 years, I'm out. There can't be any more natural disasters. And I'm happy to say that there weren't any more natural disasters. Tropical diseases, yes. Breakups, yes. Accidents, yes. Theft, yes. But no more natural disasters.
Yeah, those are all we're foreshadowing right now. That's what's happening. just letting you guys know that we're foreshadowing. So be prepared to talk about all those kind of things. So if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe now.
There's a good pitch. There you go.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh my gosh. Wow. Nora, thank you so much for sharing all these stories. I mean, it's incredible. Like, I mean, I always knew that you're an awesome person, but I mean, now that I got so sucked into that story, like, it's just incredible. I can't believe that happened. Oh my gosh, to you especially, and that it happened to you 3 times. Like, what the hell? Like, so I guess it's safe to hang out with you then. All this time,
we're cool. We're totally cool now.
All this time I've been hanging out with you, and who knows? I might just get struck by lightning. I don't know. Like,
well, stranger things have happened.
Oh my gosh, man! What the hell? Oh my gosh! So where can people find you?
So my home online is theprofessionalhobo.com. From there, you can find everything from the books that I've written to the travel lifestyle guides that I talked about earlier, to all of my horrific travel misadventures, as well as my YouTube channel and Facebook and Twitter and all that fun stuff.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
Sweet. I'll see you around next time.
All right. Case closed. That's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget that you can listen to this show over at www.travelhorrorstoriespodcast.com. And if you're listening on your mobile device, please take a second to give the episode a 5-star rating and leave a comment. It really helps the show, and episodes get discovered by more people. Plus, your feedback will help me tweak and change the show to make it the best show on the internet. Yes. Cheers.